My name's Dave Schenck. I am from Prattsburg, New York, a tiny town of about 2,000 people. Come on in. Hi. About 2,000 people northwest of Corning. Basically, war tax resistance is an act of conscience and civil disobedience whereby a person refuses to pay a portion, some portion or the entire portion of their federal income tax form, federal income tax that is owed on April 15th. Want to make a very clear distinction that war tax resistance does not get into an argument about the constitutionality of paying taxes or not. This is very specifically an act of conscience and civil disobedience whereby the person not only refuses it, but usually redirects it toward non-military humanitarian purposes. Okay? This is probably my favorite quote in the world related to war tax resistance. War tax resistance can be a powerful antidote to the peace movement, especially with individuals who are frustrated by their activism over the years, feeling that it's not doing anything. I guarantee you, war tax resistance will make you feel like you're doing something because you get the government's attention. And that's the reason I've stayed with it for about 20 years now that I've been doing it, because it's this constant back and forth for me. It's this fear that I'm taking on the IRS and their threats and that stuff, and then on the other side I feel like I'm living in consonance with my values and morals, and the incredible feeling that comes from that. And I'm not going to kid you, I vacillate all the time, you know. On our way down here I was talking with my wife, and it's like, wow, okay, we got a new administration in, maybe we can take a break from this war tax resistance and the threats and all that stuff. And we're like, so anyway, it's just because I do get a little tired of it sometimes. But any questions? Well, before I go any further, war tax resistance involves people like myself who are called W-4 resistors. In other words, W-4 resistor is a person who refuses a portion or all of their federal income tax by claiming, for example, I claim an extra allowance or two on my 1040 or my W-4 that I work for Steuben County. I'm a clinical social worker. So in order to get control of what I pay into, or withholding, excuse me, in order to control my withholding, I claim extra so that I end up owing April 15th what I end up owing money to the government, which is a very interesting concept since World War II, which is when the whole W-4 system started, whereby individual Americans have money withheld from their paychecks, interest-free to the government, and it's held until you get it back the next spring, or after January 1st, you get that money back. And meanwhile, while you have a job and that withholding tax is taken out, it's a free loan to the government. So the whole W-4 system, withholding system, has been in place since World War II. There are also people who don't file at all, war tax resistors who just simply don't file and thereby refuse participation in that system. And then there are people who choose to live below a taxable income as a way of honoring their conscience and not participating in the money that the federal income tax system, 52% I think is of the money that goes to the federal income tax on April 15th that people pay into is what goes to the military. And I know everybody's seen these pie charts about the different percentages of the pie that go to the military, ranging from anywhere from 20% up to 50%. I'll have information for you at the end of the talk today that will explain how those pie charts get drawn up. because some of them include trust funds like Medicare and other things. But the money that's paid by taxpayers on April 15th and before through the withholding system, the percentage of that goes to the military is 52%, past and present military. W-4 resistance is when I started my job with Steuben County, and many times in the past where I've had a salaried job, I'll go to my personnel office and I have to fill out a W-4 form which says how many allowances do I claim on my federal income tax, okay? Depending on how many allowances you put down, that amount determines how much is withheld by the federal income taxes withheld on your, whether it's weekly or twice monthly paycheck. There's been a lot of issues raised about knowledge. All right, well, what happens? How do you do it? So let's start there. First, and I guess the best thing I can start off with is some of the consequences. I can give you the most common consequences from my personal experience and what I've learned from other war tax resistors. I've been a W-4 resistor for about 20 years. Since, just about 1988. I took my first paid job at a hospital and I had to claim let me say about, where was that was on this part here, lying on the W-4. A lot of people, I don't know what the number is, a lot of people claim more than their actual number of exemptions for any number of reasons. So the lying, some people do it because they're expecting, some more or less income at a certain time of year. There's a variety of reasons that people can use on a W-4 for claiming more exemptions. The choice of a W-4 resistor is to claim more in order to get more control over their W-4, the tax that's withheld, in order for them to stay true to their conscience and perform an act of civil disobedience. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It's illegal. The act of, the more illegal part though is refusing to pay your taxes and choosing to redirect it somewhere else. Consequences, in 20 years I have been, probably the most common form of consequence is a computerized letter I get from the IRS every time I refuse to pay the full amount. And what I usually do is I redirect the money somewhere else. 9 times out of 10, it's the local food bank or the local food pantry where I live. April 15th, I hold a press conference, very public, hold a press conference, invite the media. This is very open, as with any act of nonviolent civil disobedience. This, being a war tax resistor, I believe is a very open act. I invite the press, usually get some decent press coverage because people are pretty fascinated by this. When somebody takes a stand and says, challenges the IRS, because most people, including myself, live in fear of the IRS. So even though I've done it for 20 years, I still feel like they could ruin my life someday. Because, I'll tell you why a little bit later. I just had a lien put on my house, for example, earlier, a couple months ago, but I'll get to that. Because I have a salary job, it's very easy for the IRS to collect. They have come to my employer, to the treasurer's office, and said, this person owes back taxes, blah, 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 plus interest and penalties. And they have levied my salary and collected whatever amount I owed on me twice in the 20 years. I have struggled with this one. They're going to get more money than in the long run. Probably not. It ends up, the process of collection is very expensive for the IRS because it involves going after somebody who owes taxes and sometimes putting liens on things and actively collecting, paperwork time. You have to hire. You have people hired at the IRS in the collection office, that kind of thing. So, will the government get more money? There is some research on that suggests not necessarily. So the effective part is, will they get more money? Maybe, maybe not. There's not real conclusive data on that, but some of it suggests that that's not the case. Many years I resisted 50% of the money I owed on April 15th. So, as I mentioned before, and I'll hand these out at the end, the pie chart about where the federal income tax goes. I mean, folks, the money that's collected April 15th, you talk about other agencies, people designating where money goes. Nothing holds a candle to the amount that's paid, the income tax and money that goes to the military. I mean, we're talking the federal income tax, not just the income tax that's collected on April 15th. We're also talking excise tax on cigarettes and alcohol goes to the federal income tax, into that pocket or that fund, and also corporate taxes go into that fund, this federal system, okay? Money, where it gets confusing is the pie chart that the general public sees is a pie chart that shows the military is only like 22%. And you'll see that in April 15th, as the budget for the federal government. The problem with the one that they show, like in USA Today and all the other papers and TV, is that pie chart includes all the trust funds, like the Medicare money that's taken out of people's paychecks, FICA, and there's other sorts of trust funds as well, and that's included in there. So it's like an obfuscation of what the federal income tax system, as opposed to the general budget. So it's really not a true representation of the federal income tax money that's collected. 52%. So you'll see in the pie chart all the human resources piece of the pie and the education, included in that's education. You talk about, it just doesn't hold a candle, and it's steadily increased over the years, and I'll have all that information for you. So just wanted to throw that out there in terms of it's just huge. Risks. People often, and this is what I encourage, and I may be moving more to this form of resistance myself, a symbolic resistance. Lately, George and I have been talking about this the last time we spoke, having people refuse a symbolic portion of taxes, or their federal income tax, because it's not the amount of resistance that's important, I think. It's that people stay true to their conscience, make some act of resistance. Because there's a lot less risk in refusing a smaller amount. Like some people, you can get real creative with this, and one of my favorites is people will owe money back to the government and they'll refuse to pay like $10.40. 1040, 1040 form. They just sort of do that kind of thing. Or 1%, or $1. It will get noticed, but that level of resistance, of course, is far less. let me give you an example. When I started resisting the 50%, which I have for many years, it's been less on other years. It takes quite a few years before they finally actually collect. They will, you know, I'm an easy person to get collected on because I have a salary job with the county. Or before I worked for a hospital. It was easy to collect on me. What matters personally to me is again the act. In that I feel that it's a direct action. I feel like I'm justified in making a change on my W-4 because I can't stand the killing in my name with my money. I can't do it. I can't willfully, in good conscience, give that willingly. Even, okay, they got to come after it and they'll get it, but at least I feel like in here, in my heart of hearts, I'm trying to resist that process and live close to my values. I live in a really, really conservative area of rural New York. And the last time we had really good coverage was right after the Iraq War started. And sort of, you know, and where I live, it's like, even in the past election, it was like 63% McCain kind of thing. And Confederate flags in the back of the trucks with the shotguns kind of thing. And I was like, and my wife and I did this interview, and almost to my dismay, we got front page coverage on the Corning Leader newspaper, which is the big Steuben County, right in the front page of the Sunday paper. And I was scared. I was kind of scared, actually. I was afraid that something was going to happen to us. And because I work at this school and went to school the next week, and I just thought we were in real trouble, and we were going to get egged, and you name it, because we weren't being patriotic. We were pulling our money from the troops who were protecting us, making the United States safe. So surprisingly, we didn't get one negative. The only negative comment I got was from the secretary at school, who came up to me after she saw the article, and she goes, "You know, if I didn't know you, I'd think you were a jerk." It was pretty funny because everybody else either didn't say anything or said, "Wow, that was pretty amazing what you did." And I was surprised about the lack of negative repercussions that we got. I think a lot of people, when you take a risk like that, are inspired more than come at you with negative stuff. That's been my experience over the years. Or people won't say anything at all if they disagree with you, really seriously. I know people have been ridiculed, or when I was in South Bend, Indiana, which is where I lived before 1994, I was part of a local war tax resistance group there, and there was a guy there who worked at a hospital, and he was sort of threatened with being fired by his boss, which if that would have happened, he could have had a lawsuit, obviously, for any number of reasons. But I think my experience is a lot has to do with your relationship with your coworkers, and I really think it boils down to people just really respond to people taking a stand, one way or the other. So haven't gotten, as conservative as an area as I live in, my experience has been that I've gotten more positives than negative. I do send a letter, compose one every year, include it with my 1040, saying why this amount is missing from what I owe and where I sent it and why. And I think that's really important because there has been a movement, there have been various bills introduced into Congress about the peace tax fund, so that people who, for reasons of conscience or religious beliefs, who want are conscientiously opposed to military or war, that they can redirect money legally so that it's always been defeated or died and has to keep being reintroduced, but it's there.
What's it called?
The Peace Fund tax bill. You know, I'm a sloppy war tax resistor. One year I didn't claim, I only owed like, I think last year like $400, $500. And so I just, which was probably out of my salary, was far less than 50%, you know that. So I ended up, I said, well, okay, we're not going to pay the 400 and we're just going to give it. So I don't go so much according to the percentages anymore. I try to keep, the important thing for me is that I owe something so that I can resist something. These percentages are symbolic based on what we know about the federal income tax pie. The symbolism and being true to my conscience is what matters to me. Anything you pay, or let's put it this way, anything that gets withheld by your employer for federal income tax, you have absolutely no control where it goes.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely none. Some people were talking about the hope or the possibility of, you know, what if everyone could choose where they, you know, if war tax resistors say, I'm not going to pay for the military, and you know, I'm going to pay for this, human needs or something. What about the person who says, okay, I don't want to pay for, you know, I want my money to go to education? The issue, it's a great issue because we absolutely have, there is no control over the withholding income tax system, the federal system, unless you choose to do an act of civil disobedience to gain more control by claiming, you know, like I do or other resistors, so that you end up owing some back. Because again, so much, for those of you who are employed or know people who are employed, check out how much is taken out with each paycheck as an interest-free loan to the government. And they hold it for about a year. I mean, it's been that way since World War II. It's an amazing system in terms of interest-free loan. That's what the Peace Fund tax bill is about, yeah, so that people who are, for lack of a better term, conscientious objectors of war taxes could then designate it. Yeah, that would be that's the whole intent of that bill. Let's say I owe, let's say I owe $1,000 this year, you know. Okay, so through withholding, let's say, I don't know what I've got. I don't even know what I've got on my W-4 right now, whether it's 1 or 2 allowances. Chances are, just because I haven't paid a lot of attention this year, chances are the amount that's been withheld is probably somewhere like $600 already. So I have no control of 60% already. Oh, guy, I could ramp up my W-4 to 14 allowances and get it all.
Can you?
You could.
Yeah.
You could. You could get complete control. Now, you might have you might have your employee. I mean, self-employed people have all the control. People, you never see it. It gets taken out, you forget about it, it's gone.
And then you get a big check.
And they, oh yeah, and it's like, and people are like, oh, I'm getting all this money back. Dude, that's been an interest-free loan for the government for like 8 months or 12 months. It's pretty phenomenal that people are conditioned to be excited that they're getting their money back. And it's been on loan, interest-free loan. It's amazing. Allowances is like if I'm married, but I don't have any kids. So if I'm a working person, I have a job where I get a salary or a weekly paycheck, and I have 4 kids, so I would put down 4, and me and my wife, and put down 6 allowances. Boom. And then that would decrease by a huge amount the amount that's withheld, because chances are I would get a ton back if I didn't put any allowances down. I had 4 kids, I'd get a huge amount back, you know, as a refund. And the reason the IRS has not come down hard, or they seem to be watching more closely how many allowances people put down on a W-4. It's not heavily scrutinized. They don't seem to watch it too closely. yet. Although occasionally you get some people in personnel offices and treasurer offices who will call, you know, who might know the person and say, this person, you know, that's rare, but it does happen. You get somebody who's like, this person's claiming too much, I'm calling the IRS. But the good thing about what I do and what resistors do in general, it's a public act. Like I say, we have press conferences, we're out there. IRS knows everything I'm doing. And even with that knowledge, there's a huge delay and weird things happen. One year, they said they charged me with this thing called a frivolous filing fine of $500. And I called them up and I said, my 1040, there was no problem on it, and I'll send you another copy. And they took it off. Then there's people who there's a 10-year statute of limitations. If you're a filer and you owe money, they've got 10 years to collect on it. I know people who have not ever been collected on. More often than not, they do get it with interest. But again, for a lot of tax resistors, it's the act of resistance, not the amount, because we believe that if enough people did it, because even with a number of people that are doing it, it gets attention. It gets government's attention. Nothing makes you feel like you're rattling a cage than you're messing with money. Let's face it, money is what makes it go. So, yeah, it's and they know, and they come. There's such a culture of fear of the IRS that's been manufactured over the years, so that people just sort of, blissfully keep paying and keep being withheld because they know I had the quote from Alexander Haig. There was an Oklahoma representative, I don't know the name, I think it was Simpson, who said that if as much as like 10-15% of people resisted, it would completely shut down the system. I mean, holy moly. That would, so it could be extremely effective. What we want to do is send a message. The number of resistors that are there now is not going to shut down the system, is not going to keep a soldier from getting his armor, but that kind of thing. They are allowed to take 75% of my salary
so they can't take all of it. They're not going to leave you like high and dry.
They leave you a little squeaking.
What if you have money in your accounts? Can they take it out of your accounts?
Mm-hmm. They can. IRS has a lot of power. However, let me tell you, had some wonderful things happen while I was collected on. And seriously, community building kind of stuff. Like peace action. You talk about direct action. This was incredible. It was really, really worth it. The first time I've been collected on twice. So the most recent time was like 98 in Prattsburgh, Steuben County. And so we had this great idea for some other war tax resistors off the website. We're going to have a 1040 party. So I had another press conference, had all our friends and people we knew in the peace movement and people not in the peace movement who just thought that was a pretty gutsy thing to do kind of thing. Have a 1040 party. Everybody's got to come in, and admission is $10.40 or some variant of $10.40, $1.40 for low-income folks. And we had this wonderful party. And you know what happened from that? People started filling up our jar, help us get through a little bit of a tight time. And plus there was this wonderful community building, people inspired by it and like going, wow, maybe I could do that. Or, yeah, we are spending too much on war and not enough on human needs, and seeing some of these figures, of what's happened over the last 25 years. And it was like, my wife and I were just like, wow, we're going to make this, This is not a huge... And somebody said about killing Iraqi babies, every time I get scared of the IRS, I have this great little photograph from American Friends Service Committee, who I love, and they've got the quote on the bottom is, it shows this child in a black and white photograph running out of a house, and this a jet, you know, getting ready to drop napalm or whatever. And it says, despite all our intentions, war comes down to killing. And every time I get scared or feel like I'm going to stop resisting, I look at that photo and just sort of meditate on it. And then I'm like, all right, I can't deal with this, so I'm going to keep resisting. There's not a registry, although on your form there was a 2008 war tax boycott. There was a concerted effort for people to include their names on a website this past year to be part of the 2008 war tax boycott. And I'm sure that website's still up and running with everybody that resisted a little or a lot of their income taxes this year, in opposition specifically to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then redirected that money to other needs. I also want to just back up something George said, because about the alternative funds that people who are resisting collect and pool their money into what George is describing, an alternative fund, an escrow account that bears interest. So you have this money in there that's generating interest. And the cool thing about that is that that money has a double purpose. You know, it can help people like me occasionally who are getting collected on, but also other cool stuff like provide scholarships for people who've been refused federal aid assistance at, you know, all that whole issue. They can give it to local charities. They can do press conferences, raise awareness and education about, you know, the huge imbalance in war spending and for human needs. I mean, this whole idea of an alternative fund's a wonderful idea that sort of multiplies an individual's resistance in a larger community kind of context. And I love it. I think it's a great idea, and one of the reasons I kept coming back, or came back again, is because I think I want to support what they're doing down here, because we don't have an alternative fund in Steuben County, because like I said, I live in the middle of 63% McCain, so, you know, it's tough if a family, especially if it's a student who is a dependent, and filing for FAFSA, federal free application, federal student aid thing, they have to, if there's a federal tax debt owed, they will not be eligible.
The student, or because of the parents' activities?
Because of parents, if they're dependent. If they're dependent. So some people still file the application anyway and take their chances, because only 30% of the FAFSA applications go through this verification process, where they actually match the income that's claimed on the application versus, where they actually do a verification process. Congress has resisted a full allowance of the IRS to say, come in and, you know, verify all of them, because there's still this feeling that people need privacy, darn it, you know, with their work, about their federal income tax. So, yeah, but right now it's 30%. Some people still file. A lot of it depends too on what kind of person you get at the FAFSA office. You know, if they decide, you know, like particularly if an application comes in and they request that somebody has, you know, the 1040s, copies of the 1040s, they'll flag the ones where, for verification, were the ones that people who haven't filed. So those are really put up for verification. So anyway, there's more information about that, plus alternative funds and grants and loans and stuff like that at this website, the centeronconscience.org, about where people who are war tax resistors or families can get ideas and stuff like that about other ways to get through college and stuff when they are refused federal aid. the question came up is, if you're a war tax resistor, can you still get federal student aid? What I know is about that is that if you had a federal debt, a federal income tax debt, you cannot get federal loans. Or at least it has to be satisfied before you can. Certainly would lend to a lot of discussions on how could the United States change its influence in the world and its place in the world? What would that mean? You know, what would it mean to create an alternative vision of our presence in the world? Heck, if we even cut back 5–10%, we're talking, I mean, look what 5–10% is on that chart. I mean, what could we do with that money here? Or, I mean, it would be a huge amount. You look at the bailouts, you know, $700 billion. I mean, man, you could go lots of different ways, but the plain fact is the military budget is just astronomical, almost beyond most people's imagination, and it's hard to wrap our heads around it sometimes because it's happened so gradually over the years and so by huge increments. It's just gotten, yeah, even if we cut back a little, it would probably shake up the world. I mean, look how the world responded to Obama's election, and you know, we still got the same same military thing going on, as far as we know. He's talked about certainly ending the wars, you know, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of hope. Yeah, there's a lot of people that look to the United States and were extremely influential. And not that I'd ever think there'd be a complete cut of military, but even if it was a 5–10% cutback, you know, there's all sorts of possibilities along that whole continuum. There's a lot in between that would really make a huge impact on the world. Fear is a huge thing. I don't want to, I mean, in a lot of this, it's, personally, it's a constant struggle to deal with fear in my life. And, you know, from Henry David Thoreau and all these people that have been war tax resistors that have inspired me, and you know, Dorothy Day, Gandhi, Thomas Merton, and the Keelers, and who lost their house, you know, because they were in it for years and years and years. And that happens extremely rarely, by the way. And I think in 50 years, only a couple people have gone to jail, just to make sure that gets out there. I think, aside from everything else, for me, it's also a quest to tackle fear. And there's one of the biggest fears I have is, you know, the kind of fear the IRS sort of throws at me all the time. So it's a nice struggle for me personally. And anyway, I'm just going off on another area there, but I think it's good to tackle whatever fears we have in our life and wrestle with them, wherever that might be. It's a good struggle.